Welcome to the Small and Simple Things podcast, our smaller format podcast. We are on episode 12, if I am not mistaken. Yes, we are on episode 12. Go ahead and if you guys have a small and simple things that you have recorded, very easy to do nowadays with your cell phone. There's a bunch of programs you could use. There's your computer that you can use. If you have a mic and a way to record, we would encourage you to go ahead and do that and send it in to us at earstohearpodcast@gmail.com so that you can join your voice with the chorus. The whole point of these and our regular podcasts as well is to bring people to Christ. And those that are on the fence, who may be on the fence, to get them back on the side of Christ and the side of the His church and His prophet and the brethren. And that kind of is the segue that I'm going to use today. I came across something that really kind of, I had a bunch of things rattling around in my mind, and I'm actually releasing this a little bit late, because I could not decide on what I wanted to record. So I waited clear up until the time when I felt like I had, what the Lord would want me to talk about. And I think I now can say with certainty that I have it, I've got it, I know what I need to release to the audience here. And I hope that it will be of as much spiritual benefit to you as it was to me, because I didn't understand some things on this, and the Spirit took me to school a little bit. I would like to talk about something that President Nelson mentioned when they dedicated the Rome, Italy temple. And a lot of you have probably heard this, and maybe this is going to be news to you, maybe it won't be. But I had some light shed forth on this, because when I had heard it, I kind of took it for face value, right? Because when President Nelson is quoted as saying that the Rome temple dedication is a hinge point in church history, he also said things are going to move forward at an accelerated pace. The church is going to have an unprecedented future, unparalleled. We're just building up to what's ahead now. So when I had heard that, I thought, boy, that is awesome. That's so cool. That means there's some big stuff coming. We're talking about an accelerated pace, moving forward. That's all very exciting. And I kind of just skipped over the whole hinge point. I think when I hear that, I just kind of think it's like a hinge, like your door is on a hinge, right? It opens, it closes. You all can picture a hinge, I'm sure. And so for, a while now, over a year, 2 years, whatever, I think it was 2019 or 2020 that was done, probably 2019 actually, because the pandemic was in 2020. So if we go to the definition of a hinge point, what is a hinge point? Well, turns out there's a few different definitions. The one that I thought that he was referring to would have been, and this does apply, of course. You could get layers of meaning with this, and I had the very most shallow layer that I could understanding of this, which is still beneficial, but I think it goes much deeper than what I had initially thought. The definition is a hinge point is the point where something literally pivots. That's like, okay, makes sense, like a door. It's the turning point where you are going to see a significant change take place. That's pretty prophetic. That's pretty dang interesting. So if we're thinking about this like a door, right, then we're about to swing. We're about to pivot. The door is opening, has been opening. And now that it has reached that, it's reached a certain angle where we're going to now pivot, right? So having that understanding, we say, okay, well, is there any other meaning behind that? And, well, yes, there is. That's why we're talking about it. That's why I'm bringing this up. Another definition for a hinge point is that point in a lesson where you need to check to see if your students are ready to move on. And if yes, in which direction, right? There's also a hinge point that you can apply to movies, right? To like a movie, a musical score and stuff like that. Like if you want to take a pop culture reference here, you can take like The Lord of the Rings, right? You can say, okay, and that's a trilogy, so it's a little bit more complicated, but not as much as you might think, right? We see Hobbiton. We see Frodo there with Bilbo and stuff like that, right? We see it's peaceful, all this other stuff. And that's, basically the introduction. So when you go on down the line now, on the storyline, we start to get more of the story, we start to get more of the characters introduced, eventually until we come to a conflict, right? And that first point is the pivot. So when you come to that point, you are now going to ride up. You're going to ride up a steep grade. That's the rising action. Right, so you could say that would be like the introduction of the Nazgul, right, in the Lord of the Rings. We know that there's conflict now. There's something going on. There's something to be escaped. There's a mission that we don't quite know about yet. We then begin a upward climb where things kind of get crazier and crazier and crazier. The battles get more frequent, right? We're not seeing little skirmishes anymore. Well, we're seeing big actual battles, right? As we go into the second movie, The Two Towers, right? Or the book. I've read the books and I've watched the movies. They're both fantastic, but the books are definitely better. But as we see, we go from kind of small fish in the first movie to this growing action, right? Until when we arrive to the climax of the movie, the high point of the movie, which is where we, whatever is supposed to happen happens, basically. If we're applying this to gospel now, we're going to take a break from the nerdology here of the Lord of the Rings. But we're going to apply this to gospel now. So if we're looking at the climax, right? And well, let's go back to the pivot point here. If we're looking at a pivot point, we're looking at conflict. So we've had our introduction into the restoration of the gospel, and it's been slowly rising action ever since then, right? We've had little skirmishes here and there and stuff like that, but now, instead of like the United States or instead of like the state of Missouri kicking us out or something like that, we're now going to see bigger conflicts, right? We're on an uphill climb. And if we are indeed at a pivot point, which our prophet, who is a prophet, seer, and revelator, and who just spoke as a prophet, seer, and revelator, right, for the Lord, when he said that, Hingepoint, quote, we know that we are on a uphill battle here. We're on an uphill, the action is going to rise. The action is going to rise until we hit a climax. So we're now at that conflict. We've entered that conflict zone. As it turns out, I don't even know if it was a year after he said that, we had what you could refer to as a desolating sickness, hit the world, the entire world, which gives rise to the a scourge that's prophesied about in the scriptures, and there's people that will argue for and against that. If you look up the definitions of scourge, I think that COVID-19 definitely hits that and hits it on all the points. But regardless of that, whether you believe that or not, the prophet has said that we are at that pivot point. So it really doesn't matter if it was COVID-19 or not. Something is going down. And I feel like you can feel that. If you're close to the Spirit in any degree, you've been feeling something, right? You've been feeling something telling you to prepare. Maybe it's telling you to get food storage. Maybe it's telling you to get your butt back to church. Whatever that case is. We are on that uphill climb towards some things. And, not to be too alarmist, but, also to be able to share what I feel like I have with the audience here. I feel that we are on the precipice of basically what the scriptures call the stout horn, the Assyrian, the Antichrist. Like, I believe that we are seeing the fledgling beginnings of that yoke beginning to take shape. And beginning to come to power. And I believe that what is next will be an entrance into, when J. Golden Kimball quoted his father, President Kimball, when he said, a test is coming, right? That is the beginning, that is, or we are in the beginning, that is a bullet point on that rising action that we are going to experience and that we have been experiencing. Like, we're in it right now. We're in it. This is the time, if you get into Isaiah, right, this is the time where in Isaiah chapter 1, where the Lord is going, he's telling us the situation at hand, right? He's telling us what's going on. And if you look into Isaiah chapter 1 and you see him concerned, it says, the vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. Okay, there's something called dualism that takes place in these passages and in many scriptures in general. This is exactly why Nephi included Isaiah chapters into the Book of Mormon, which was precious real estate on the plates, because what is happening here is that, yes, these things have already taken place, but in a really cool prophetic way, he was also prophesying what would happen to us, to America, right, to the Lord's church, not just America, but the Lord's church. In the United States. And when you read it with that in mind, and when you look at the news, obviously, you can see where we are living through biblical times right now. As we begin to ride this wave on up, and there's so much that I could get into. I'm really having to just hold myself back and skim the surface with this. If you can just kind of take stock of where you're at right now, spiritually, as well as temporally, I think that you will recognize some things. And I would encourage you to read Isaiah chapter 1 with that pivot point and with that in mind, that he is not just talking about Judah and Jerusalem, he is talking about America and his church, right? Elder Holland just barely came out and gave a very stirring bit of advice to BYU concerning LGBTQ stuff, right? It was very, very tenderly delivered, but it was somewhat of a rebuke nonetheless. And when we see things like that happening at BYU, and when we see some of the corrections that have to take place in the church, when we see a lot of our own people who are leaving the church, when President Nelson and the rest of the First Presidency weighs in on a vaccine, right? When they weigh in on a vaccine and speak as the Lord's mouthpiece, we see people leaving over that. Boy, we are on the rise of action. I literally watched people apostatize over that message. Brothers and sisters, this is the worst possible time to get out of the boat. This is the worst possible time to get out of the boat. This is the worst possible time to stop praying, to stop reading your scriptures, to not be close to the Spirit, and to harden your heart. We are about to witness, again, I'm going to reference President Nelson, we are about to witness what Nephi saw in vision. We are going to feel that increase in the rising action of that pivot point. I'm going to put a little graphic here so that you can see what I'm talking about. When we hit that climax, that will be a really cool place to be, because we will have been living through tribulation. We'll be living through the test. We will have been refined to a point. We're looking at things like the redemption of Zion. We're looking at things like the return of the lost 10 tribes, who will then help us, the Ephraimites, build the city of Zion. I think it's also worth noting that when President Nelson was speaking about this Hingepoint, you can look up online and you can see that every single one of the 12 apostles were there, and the first presidency. Everybody, all 15 of the brethren were there. And they all had their picture taken. And it was truly incredible, because the backdrop was inside of the Rome temple, the Rome, Italy temple. And in the background, you can see the original 12 apostles who were there in statue form. Something that I noticed about the 12 apostles in statue form, they're the original 12, was that they each had their instrument of their martyrdom that was depicted there with them. Now, whether that is some type of foreshadowing, some type of solidarity with our apostles and our first presidency, I don't know. I won't speak to that. But I do know that we have some things coming our way right now. And if we are not strong enough, we're going to fall. If we don't have the spiritual fortitude to keep our eyes fixed on the Lord's mouthpiece and on His brethren, we're not going to be able to navigate the treacherous waters that are ahead. As we have entered into this hinge point, and as we rise and as we continue that climb up to the crescendo, to the climax of the plot structure of this world, of our prophetic timeline, going from Adam down up until here at this present time, we have to be ready and we have to be strong. We have to be able to we have to be able to stand in holy places and not be moved, because there's a lot of stuff that we're going to experience on this way up to the crescendo, up to the climax of the pyramid, I guess you could call it, right? As we're going up, as we're journeying up this pyramid, we're going to experience a lot. We're going to get squeezed. We're going to get purified in ways that we can't see coming yet. And if Isaiah is any indication of what's going to happen, then it's going to be tough. And I would encourage you to read Isaiah. I've just started reading it with a bit of a thirst, because I feel that time is running out on some things. And again, quoting President Nelson, he mentioned that as well, where he said, time is running out. It's time. It's time to get your spiritual house in order, because time is running out. He mentioned that in an April general conference. Brothers and sisters, I hope that this little nugget of information is useful to you. I hope that it causes you to do something. I hope it causes you to open up your scriptures and to not do what I seem to do all the time, which is try to passively learn as much as I can, but try to actively learn and try to actively read the words of Isaiah, because I have never had an awakening like this when I read their words. I feel like I know what's going to happen now. I'm getting insight. And I mean, go figure, that's what Christ said as well. He's like, hey, you guys should probably read the words of Isaiah because they're fantastic, they're great. And Nephi tells us to liken the scriptures unto ourselves. There's a lot of things there. This is one of those subjects that I could go on and on and on about. I've had to really hold myself back here from getting into some things, but I'm given a broad stroke here on purpose, because I think that through study and through understanding, we will not only be able to abide the day, but we will be able to thrive in that day regardless of what situation we're in. So I would encourage you to stand in holy places and not be moved no matter what comes our way, no matter what our prophet and the president of the church has to say and what he weighs in on. Don't be moved. Don't get out of the boat. And say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.